Welcome back to Survival in Wild. From brutal survival competitions with prize pools up to $500,000 to daring expeditions deep into the heart of untamed jungles, where every second is a fight against nature just to survive another night. From the freezing wilderness of the Arctic to the snake-infested, mosquito-swarmed swamps of the Amazon, each journey is a test of endurance, willpower, and raw survival instinct. At Survival in Wild, you'll follow fearless adventurers who push their limits, battling hunger, cold, and danger lurking in every shadow of the wild. These aren't just trips, they're life-or-death battles, where even the smallest mistake can cost everything. Are you ready to step into the world of real survival? Hit that subscribe button and join us in the wildest survival journeys on the planet. Welcome to a brand new survival series, the most thrilling and intense adventure ever. 10 contestants will push their limits deep in the heart of the Labrador Peninsula, one of the most remote, frigid, and untamed regions in eastern Canada. No electricity, no food, no communication. Each contestant may bring only 10 survival items. The rest, they must find or make on their own. They will face off against brutal nature, bone-chilling cold, swarms of bloodthirsty mosquitoes, lurking black bears, and howling wolves in the dead of night. No support team, no easy way out. If you tap out, you lose everything. If you endure, you claim a $500,000 prize and the title of Ultimate Survivalist. But no one expected that just days into the challenge, a massive snowstorm would strike out of nowhere. Temperatures plummet to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Shelters are ripped apart. Food freezes. Clean water becomes more precious than gold. Some contestants begin to hear strange sounds echoing from the dark woods once night falls. And soon, it seems they're not just battling nature, but something else, something they can't explain. Will they survive or fall to the icy wilderness? Survival at the Edge, Labrador, coming soon. Are you ready to witness the ultimate battle between human grit and the raw power of the wild? Let's kick off this survival challenge with Benji, a true modern hunter. From setting traps to building fires, even firing a bow with pinpoint accuracy, Benji is a master of it all. With his wilderness skills, that $500,000 prize seems like it's already in his pocket. The rivers around here are teeming with fish, and deeper in the Labrador wilderness, the land offers no shortage of resources, edible berries, wild herbs, and even game animals lurking in the shadows. As he ventures deeper into the forest, Benji suddenly hears a strange noise in the distance. He instinctively grips his bow, eyes narrowing, quiet, focused. Moments later, tuak. One arrow, one clean shot. The prey goes down. Dinner is secured. A clean source of protein, earned with the calm confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times. Benji's swagger? Absolutely earned. But up here in Labrador, the weather is as wild as the land itself. One moment, the skies are clear. The next, a sudden downpour hits like betrayal from an old friend. The rain lashes down, cold and merciless. And this is just day one. The next contestant to join the challenge is Kelly. As soon as she landed on the island, she rushed to build her shelter. Dark clouds were gathering fast, and strong winds had already begun to blow. She didn't fuss too much over materials or structure, just tightly fastened some ropes and threw a waterproof tarp over them. It was quick. It was simple, but it would soon be the decision she deeply regretted. By the next morning, her entire body was itching like crazy. Turns out, she had been attacked by a swarm of black flies during the night. That was the final straw. Kelly decided to relocate her camp to a better spot. As she moved deeper into the forest, she noticed something had disturbed the grass. Fresh tracks. Curious, she followed them cautiously to see what had passed through. Suddenly, she froze. Reaching for an arrow, she spotted it. A wild grouse foraging nearby. No hesitation. She drew her bow and fired, but missed. Fortunately, the bird didn't fly away. Taking a deep breath, she aimed again. This time it was a perfect shot. The arrow found its mark, her first successful hunt, and the joy on her face said it all. Her cooking method was as practical as her survival instincts. After plucking the bird and removing the inedible parts, she simply boiled it with some wild mushrooms. Just like that, she had a warm, nutritious meal, hard-earned and well-deserved. Jake is the youngest participant in this survival challenge. Born in 2000, he's a wilderness survival instructor with 3 years of experience, and he's even had a face-to-face encounter with a brown bear. His passion for survival started at the age of 11, so things like building shelters, starting fires, and hunting come naturally to him. Currently, he doesn't have a proper home, so if he wins the competition, his dream is to buy a house and finally settle down and get married. On day 3 of the challenge, while out foraging, Jake discovered fresh black bear tracks. They looked very recent, a sign that a life-or-death encounter could happen at any moment. Later, while venturing deeper into the woods, Jake stumbled upon an abandoned animal trap. It was like the forest itself was arming him for what's coming. But first, he had to check whether it still worked. He reset the trap and tested it using a tree branch. Snap! The trap sprung perfectly. It was fully functional and could soon be his best line of defense or his next tool for catching game. On the morning of day 4, Jake woke up after a good night's sleep and was greeted by an unexpected opportunity. A squirrel had wandered straight into his vicinity. Opportunities like that don't come often. With just one arrow, he took down the poor squirrel. Jake couldn't believe how easy the hunt had been. But as he was about to head back to camp with his prize, he spotted a grouse perched on a nearby tree, and it had witnessed everything. Now, when there's a third-party witness at the scene, Jake knew he couldn't let it escape. If this bird went back and warned the entire flock, how would he ever get grilled grouse again? So he quietly stalked the bird and released an arrow, hitting it right in the ribs. But this grouse had a strong will to survive. Even while injured, it fought to flee. After a tense chase, Jake finally caught up and retrieved the bird. Back at camp, he got the fire going and began prepping the grouse, cleaning it and dropping the entire bird into a pot to cook. When he finally lifted the lid, the aroma of wild grouse soup filled the air, spreading across the forest. So far, everything is going surprisingly well for Jake. The woman standing before us is tougher than even Ed Stafford himself. Her name is Jessie, a former Air Force survival and evasion instructor. After retiring from service, she devoted her life to teaching survival skills, hoping to inspire more people to fall in love with nature through her courses. The moment she landed, Jessie immediately began surveying the surrounding environment, scanning for valuable resources. While walking along a stream, she discovered something alarming: the footprints of a fully grown bear. Now, keep in mind, an adult bear can weigh anywhere from 600 to 1,600 pounds. So it was pretty clear this was not a place to linger. Jessie made her way further and found a flat patch of land, suitable for setting up a temporary shelter for the night. But just after midnight, she was jerked awake by a low growl echoing through the darkness. There was no mistaking it. It was a bear. Still, Jessie remained calm and confident, even boldly stating, "If it comes any closer, I'll turn it into tonight's dinner." That's what she said. But to be honest, even I'm not so sure about that. Benji is showing off his muscles in front of the camera, clearly proud and confident. Right from the start, he chose to set up camp near the river, making it easier to fish for food. Using a dry tree branch as a traditional fishing rod, he skillfully crafts a makeshift setup, something that's pretty easy for a guy like him. The competition rules strictly prohibit the use of fishing nets. Otherwise, Benji wouldn't be out here catching fish one by one like this. After nearly 2 hours of casting again and again to the point of dizziness, he finally gets a bite. The fish slips off the hook just as he's pulling it up, but luckily it flops onto the riverbank. And with lightning reflexes, Benji grabs it. A successful catch. In the next few hours, it's as if the survival gods were on his side. One small fish after another falls for his line, and in less than half an hour, he's caught 12 small fish. Back at camp, he places them on a metal lid to grill, sprinkling a bit of salt to enhance the flavor. Salt not only makes it tastier, but also replenishes essential minerals and electrolytes. Before long, the fish are crispy and golden brown, ready to eat, a well-earned feast after a long day in the wild. Next up is Juan, a true forest man who's lived in the wild since childhood. He's a lover of extreme sports, so there was no way he'd miss a competition like this. Juan firmly believes that once you've fully adapted to nature, winning that $500,000 prize is just a matter of time. Before leaving, he even promised his girlfriend, "The day I return will be the day we get married." But the moment his boots hit the forest floor, trouble began. He struggled to find a flat patch of land to set up camp. Worse yet, fresh bear droppings were everywhere, a clear sign he wasn't alone. He wandered deeper into the dense forest, weaving between towering trees and thick underbrush, searching for a safe, open area. The journey was exhausting, but finally, he found a perfect spot. Unlike other contestants who threw together quick shelters, Juan chose to go the hard route. Build a strong, secure camp from the start. Better safe than sorry. While collecting wood, he suddenly heard the sharp chirp of a squirrel nearby. He quickly grabbed his bow, an arrow, and followed the sound. But halfway there, the squirrel vanished. No tracks, no sound, nothing. Could it really move that fast? Just as he was about to return empty-handed, Juan stumbled upon several rusty cans scattered in the woods. Something clicked. Back at camp, he cut the bottoms off the small cans, stacked them to make a smoke pipe, used a larger can as a fire pot, and assembled everything into a makeshift cooking stove to make it stronger and heat-resistant. He even smeared clay around the joints while lighting a fire inside to dry it out quickly. By the time night fell, his shelter was ready, and his stove was already glowing with warmth. Contestant number 6 is Igor, and when it comes to survival skills, there's no need for debate. He earned his spot here after a rigorous selection process. Born and raised in Russia, Igor has been training in survival since childhood. He even once took down a 2,000-pound bison on his own. He joined the competition not only to prove his abilities, but also with the hope of winning and improving his family's life back home. But after 4 full days in the wild, Igor still hasn't found a suitable place to build a shelter. The area he's currently in lies along a coastal shoreline, where the tides have washed up large amounts of seaweed that now hang from tree branches. It's not tasty by any means, but when your stomach is growling, a handful of seaweed doesn't seem like such a bad idea. Timogen is the first contestant from Asia, and with that came a heavy weight on his shoulders as he stepped into the competition. He has extensive survival experience, especially in harsh, freezing environments. Not only is he highly skilled in wilderness survival, but he also possesses advanced medical knowledge and a steely determination, believing that he can win the $500,000 prize to pay for tuition and build a home for his mother. From the moment he landed, Timogen found a suitable spot to build his shelter. But first, he needed to set up a temporary camp just to get through the night. With the discipline of a former soldier, he knew exactly what had to be done to create a warm and secure shelter. Once his temporary camp was ready, he dug a fire pit, not just for cooking, but also for providing much-needed warmth. For Timogen, this part of the build had to be sturdy, because when you're battling the cold, your fire is your lifeline. Adam is building a solid shelter with a slanted roof, not only to keep warm, but also to protect himself from potential black bear encounters. At this point, he's putting the search for food on hold, because finishing his shelter properly is the top priority. Once winter arrives, the cold in this area will be absolutely brutal. Back home, Adam is a log cabin construction expert, a true professional when it comes to trap making and fishing. He once drifted across the Pacific Ocean for 90 days, so enduring loneliness? That's second nature to him. To ensure a good night's sleep, Adam built a simple bed frame from sturdy branches, then placed his sleeping bag on top. This clever setup elevates him off the cold ground, helping to retain body heat more effectively. Tom is the next contestant to join the challenge. He owns a massive 2,000-hectare ranch and is an American who was born in South Africa. From a young age, he frequently traveled to Kenya and Tanzania, growing up close to wild animals. This early exposure unknowingly shaped him into an incredibly patient hunter. Rather than rushing to build a shelter, Tom roams the forest in search of his first meal. After a while, he suddenly stops, pulls out his bow, and fires straight up into the trees. A squirrel falls to the ground. He quickly prepares the prey, and though he keeps apologizing to the poor squirrel, Tom admits he can't afford to skip a protein boost. He eats everything, even the bones. Still not concerned about building a shelter, he prioritizes food above all else. Tom cuts his own hair to use as fishing bait, combining it with paracord, the squirrel's tail, and a fishing hook, thus creating a secret custom bait. To test its effectiveness, he heads to the riverbank. Amazingly, less than 30 minutes later, he lands his first fish. It seems his bait is really working. Within an hour, he catches 3 large fish. If Tom can keep up this momentum, there's no doubt he could be on his way to winning the $500,000 prize. Terry is a true fisherman at heart. His knowledge about fish is probably better than what he knows about his girlfriend. Besides fishing, Terry has trained in survival skills. Spending an entire month in the wild? That's nothing new to him. This time, he joined the challenge not just to test his limits, but also to bring home the $500,000 prize. Right now, he's surviving on boiled water to fight off hunger, because he's been busy building a temporary shelter to sleep through the night. As he opens his dry bag to grab the dry firewood he had gathered earlier, he realizes with horror that it rained heavily last night, and he had left all the wood outside. Now it's nearly impossible to find dry kindling, especially in Labrador, where it rains a third of the year. His only shot is to cut into logs and hope to find dry wood inside. He scrapes fine sawdust from a log and tries to make fire, but the ferro rod won't light the sawdust. He tries again and again, strike after strike, until the moon rises, and still no success. At last, he has no choice but to give up and go to sleep cold and hungry. All he can hope for now is that no bears come wandering into his camp tonight. The next morning, Terry woke up early, determined not to let the fire win. With patience and grit, he finally sparked a flame. That tiny flicker was a glimmer of hope. And when he took his first sip of boiling water, the feeling of satisfaction was, well, indescribable. Now is time to build a permanent shelter. But to everyone's surprise, he built it in the simplest way possible. Seriously, is this guy not afraid of bears? Let's just hope he upgrades it soon. Or who knows what kind of wild surprises he might get. And now, it's time to show the skills of a true fisherman. Unbelievably, he caught his first fish almost instantly. Well, what do we expect from a guy who knows more about fish than romance? Tonight, for the first time in days, his stomach won't be crying for mercy, because before this, he'd only been feeding it hot water and false hope. Adam's shelter still looked like the most solid structure out of all the contestants, sturdy, secure, and ready to handle whatever the wild throws at it. For the past few days, Adam had been roaming around the area, bow in hand, hunting, but luck just wasn't on his side. Then one day, while standing on a hill, he spotted a grouse flying by. Without hesitation, Adam grabbed his bow and gave chase, tracking it into a dense forest. He had to stay still and observe quietly for a long while before he finally spotted it. Adam took a deep breath, carefully lined up the shot, and let the arrow fly. But it only grazed the bird, and the grouse escaped into the woods. That missed shot haunted him all night. The next morning, he decided it was time to switch tactics. If he couldn't hunt, he'd fish. He crafted a makeshift fishing rod, then headed straight for the river. And guess what? It worked better than expected. Within 2 hours, Adam had caught a bunch of fish. Back at camp, he cleaned them carefully, then combined the fish with some foraged mushrooms to cook a hearty soup. By the time night fell, the soup was finally ready, warm, fragrant, and filling. After a long day of hard work and adjustments, Adam finally got the reward he deserved. A hot meal, a full belly, and the satisfaction of persistence paying off. And that wraps up the very first episode of the Survival Challenge in Labrador. But don't worry, there's still so much more action, drama, and incredible survival moments waiting for you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the wildest survival competitions ahead. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode. Let's kick off this episode with Igor. While the other contestants have been feasting on fish and meat, Igor has been surviving solely on seaweed for 10 straight days. No real food, no finished shelter. So after this meal, it's time to finally build a proper place to live. In a region where it rains constantly and everything is damp, a shelter with a raised wooden floor is the smartest choice. It keeps things dry and helps keep bugs away. From dawn till dusk, Igor works nonstop, and soon the floor and walls start to take shape. Just as he's about to take a break, he spots a lone grouse wandering nearby. No way he's letting that go. He grabs his saw and charges in like a tiger. One loud shout, and the prey is down. Even Igor's surprised that a saw did the job. At last, after 10 long days of nothing but seaweed, Igor finally has a real meal worth celebrating. Another cheerful day greets Adam, and with some free time on his hands, he decides to upgrade his shelter. The place is so tightly sealed that during one cooking session, he almost turned himself into a piece of smoked meat. Time for a real fireplace, one with proper ventilation inside his shelter. He picks a good spot and starts digging a pit. Then, using branches and vines, he builds a sturdy frame and carefully covers it with a mix of clay and grass. This not only reinforces the fireplace, but also makes it more durable. With a new chimney in place, he hopes the smoke will finally escape instead of choking him out. Just as he's fully focused on the fireplace, a sudden flap of wings catches his attention. He dashes toward the sound. It's a grouse. But in his haste, he didn't bring his bow. All he has is a stick. He throws at the bird perched nearby, but the grouse flies off, leaving Adam and his empty belly behind. Disappointed, he heads back to camp. But no time to sulk. There's still work to finish. He gets back to the fireplace, lights a small fire to harden the clay walls. And to his relief, the smoke flows cleanly out through the chimney. Looks like Adam's hard work is finally paying off. Jacques truly seems like nature's favorite child. Early in the morning, he already reels in a fresh catch, a good-sized fish. But he knows all too well, the smell of blood can attract unwanted visitors, especially black bears who can sniff it out from kilometers away. So without wasting a second, he cleans the fish on the spot, careful to leave no trace behind. Back at his shelter, he grills it up and takes a well-earned bite. The shelter? Solid. The food? Plentiful. Everything seems to be going his way. But even in this paradise of solitude, something's missing. The silence is loud. He finds himself constantly thinking about his girlfriend and his loyal dog waiting at home. Survival may be going smoothly, but loneliness? That's a whole different challenge. Something's not quite right with Jacques. He's been eating well, fish and meat nearly every day. He sleeps nearly 12 hours a night. And yet, it looks like he's lost at least 10 pounds. What's going on? Maybe it's not a physical illness. Maybe it's just a severe case of missing his wife. As if matching his mood, dark clouds roll across the sky. He hurries to chop some dry wood to keep warm. But just then, a sudden noise in the trees. This time, he's prepared. He grabs his bow before investigating. Up in the branches, a squirrel bounces playfully from limb to limb. One arrow. One shot, one clean takedown. Back at camp, he cooks it carefully. And despite feeling a little guilty, he knows he needs the protein. The $500,000 prize is calling. But each night, he's wrestling with himself. Is it worth it? All this isolation, just for the money? That night, Jacques lies awake, his mind spinning with thoughts of home, and the woman he misses more than any meal. After a long night of soul-searching, Jacques finally makes a decision. He walks over to the satellite phone, his hand trembling slightly. His heart pounds as he lifts it to his ear, unsure if he's making the right choice. But then, he remembers something powerful. No amount of money can replace true happiness, not even $500,000. So why stay another day in the wilderness, when what he truly wants is already waiting for him back home? With that, Jacques whispers a quiet goodbye to the forest. packs his things, and prepares to leave. Farewell, Jacques. You may not be the last one standing, but you've already won in the most important way. Take care out there. If this wilderness mansion is completed, it could become the most epic shelter in the history of the competition. Just the thought of it makes Jessie's eyes light up with excitement. From the moment she first set foot here, she had one goal in mind: win the $500,000. And to make that happen, she knew she had to build a shelter that was not only strong, but also warm and safe. Luckily, nature seems to be on her side. Her chosen spot lies beneath a gentle hillside, small enough to block the wind, and surrounded by just the right size trees. Sturdy, yet easy to carry. It's exhausting work, but Jessie isn't slowing down. She's driven by one dream: to become champion. Once the house frame is finished, she covers it with a layer of thin wooden planks, completing the basic skeleton of her dream home. Worried about the weight of winter snow, she carefully reinforces the support beams, determined not to let her hard work collapse under pressure. And now, the foundation is set. Jessie's wild fortress is coming to life. Most of the female contestants had already left early. Will Jessie be the one to finally break that curse? Every day, she survives on nothing but warm water and wild berries. She's eaten so many, they barely have any taste left. But with no animals in sight, no grouse, no rabbits, it's like she's the only living soul in this forest. Still, Jessie doesn't give up. Instead of chasing after animals, she chooses a more patient strategy: trapping. And honestly, she prefers it that way. With her military survival training, Jessie quickly identifies the squirrel trails and begins setting traps along their path. Simple snares made from wire and tension. Once they step through, the noose tightens and dinner is served. In just a short time, she sets 15 traps, just as she's sitting down to rest. A sudden rustle in the brush grabs her attention. She holds her breath. Could it be already? And yes, within less than 30 minutes, a squirrel has been caught. An early reward for her smart strategy. After a moment of hesitation, she decides to process the animal by the riverside. Tonight, there will be soup. There may not be much meat, but at least it's something warm, savory, and earned. Under the flickering light of the fire, Jessie sips her squirrel soup, and in that quiet, peaceful moment, she feels something she hasn't in a while: true satisfaction. It's finally time for Benji to build a proper shelter. Since day one, he's been constantly foraging for food, which means up until now, he's only been surviving in a temporary tarp tent. He chooses a quiet patch of forest near both fresh water and the beach, a strategic location that's rich in resources. It's going to take a lot of energy and time, but a sturdy shelter could protect him from the relentless rain and wind. Benji opts for a simple A-frame structure. He uses nearby tree trunks as supports, then drapes a waterproof tarp over the top. After securing the edges and reinforcing the frame, his basic shelter is complete. After lying down for a short break, a sharp chirp catches his attention. A squirrel nearby, careless and unaware. Without a second of hesitation, Benji grabs his bow, crouches low, and silently stalks his target. Then thwack! A single arrow. Clean. Precise. Bullseye. He's not just a survivor, he's a hunter. And dinner? It's ready to be cooked. Benji chooses to roast the squirrel, adding just a touch of salt to bring out the flavor. As the aroma rises through the forest, he leans back, content. Right now, life's not so bad. Food is regular. Shelter is secure. And Benji? He's thriving out here. Adam, who always dreamed of hunting a large black bear, had been waiting for 15 days, but still hadn't encountered a single one. So, he had no choice but to head to the river to fish. Ever since he caught a few small fish there, Adam believed that this river could be the lifesaver of his journey. According to theory, today's calm weather should have made it a perfect day for fishing. But from noon till evening, not a single fish took the bait. Even though he changed fishing spots many times, the result remained the same: nothing. In the end, he could only think of another way to find food. After his failed attempt at fishing, Adam decided to focus on practicing his archery skills. Whether this last-minute training would pay off or not, well, we'll find out when he actually goes out to hunt a female black bear. On the way, he even stumbled upon a large golden cow mushroom, perfect for stewing with bear meat if he gets lucky. As he walked, Adam kept a close eye on his surroundings, making sure not to miss a single movement in the forest. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. It looked like he had spotted something. Without hesitation, he drew his bow and fired an arrow. The arrow shot through the air and struck its target in the heart. And the target was a chicken. Yes, not a bear, just a chicken. Still, that means dinner is secure tonight. But first, he plucked the feathers and cleaned out the insides. Then he returned to camp, stuffed a few blueberries into the chicken, added a bit of water, and simmered it for 30 minutes. When it was finally time to eat, it was a little burnt, just a little, but the flavor wasn't bad at all. Actually, it was pretty tasty. While the other contestants were still struggling to find food, Benji had already filled his camp with fish. To deal with the surplus, he dug a small hole to store the extra catch. But little did he know, his furry neighbors were already eyeing it. It wouldn't be long before they helped themselves. Despite being good at fishing, Benji still preferred hunting. As he wandered through a swampy area, he noticed signs of a large animal. Big tracks, bent grass, fresh droppings. This could be something huge. Excited by the thought, he grabbed his bow and followed the trail. From a distance, he spotted something swimming in the water. Without wasting a second, he drew his bow and fired an arrow. The first shot missed, but he wasn't giving up. He took another arrow, aimed carefully, and this time it looked like a hit. Unfortunately, whatever it was escaped into the brush before he could reach it. Convinced it hadn't gone far, he circled around, checking every corner, from the small creeks to the wide riverbanks, but nothing. Not a sound, not a movement. By then, the sky had turned dark. Benji had no choice but to head back to camp, hoping tomorrow he'd get another chance to find it. Even in the middle of the wild, Kelly still tried to maintain her elegance. Today was the first time she washed her hair in over 2 weeks. And after that long overdue rinse, she felt completely refreshed, like a brand new woman. The weather was perfect, clear skies, and a gentle breeze. A great day to build a proper shelter. Her plan? A semi-underground shelter, with half of its volume buried beneath the earth. The biggest advantage of this design? Excellent heat retention. Even if heavy snow covered the ground, inside would stay as warm as springtime. After piling up dirt on both sides to form walls, Kelly laid a heat-insulated, waterproof tarp over the top. And just like that, her new shelter was complete. To celebrate the move into her cozy new home, Kelly lit a campfire and basked in the warm glow. She looked around, satisfied and proud of what she had built with her own hands. Things weren't looking good for Terry. With no food for days, his body had stopped functioning properly. He hadn't gone to the bathroom in over 10 days. Recently, his only hope had been to hunt a beaver. Just one beaver could be worth several big fish in terms of nourishment. Hungry and desperate, Terry woke up at 4 a.m. He made his way to the riverbank, nestling into the tall grass, waiting for manatees, or anything, really, to appear. At the same time, he quietly shared the peaceful sunrise on the Labrador Peninsula. A while later, a reckless little beaver showed up, swimming leisurely in the water. Worried it might drown, Terry pulled out an arrow, not out of malice, but to end things quickly and make it easier to retrieve. His arrow hit the mark. The beaver thrashed and tried to escape. But with that kind of wound, it couldn't have gone far. As predicted, a few minutes later, its body floated to the surface. Without hesitation, Terry stripped down and stepped into the river to rescue the drowned animal. At last, he succeeded in retrieving the beaver, but unfortunately, it didn't survive. On the other side, Tom was hard at work building his shelter. He chose to set up camp alongside a mountain slope, a clever move to help retain warmth during the freezing winter months. After a while, hunger started to kick in, so he grabbed his fishing rod and headed to the river. He had caught 3 fish from this very spot before, and today was no different. Within minutes, the surface of the water began to ripple wildly. Tom pulled his first catch of the day. This one, absolutely perfect for grilling, crispy skin, juicy meat. A total treat in the wild. He returned to camp and savored the reward of his effort. But hey, don't forget to finish building that shelter after you're full, buddy. Igor was doing his morning workout before starting to build his shelter. After a good round of exercise, he headed into the forest to chop some firewood for his tent. But he had only been working for a short while before hunger kicked in. He had just taken his fishing rod out to try his luck, but when he returned to camp, all he had were a single clam and a bit of seaweed. Well, better than nothing, right? The next morning, he woke up early to begin building his forest villa. Using charcoal as toothpaste, he reminded himself that keeping his teeth clean was crucial. Once they start to rot, the pain is unbearable, and eating becomes a nightmare. Before continuing construction, he sat down to carefully think through the design of his shelter. After calculating all the materials needed, he finally began the labor-intensive process of building. It quickly became clear how physically demanding the task was. Fatigue started to set in, and his strength began to fade. He no longer worried about survival. What he truly longed for now was an escape from this island. This place was far too lonely and harsh. The mental and emotional toll had pushed him beyond his limits. After a long moment of inner struggle, he accepted defeat. Honestly, I wasn't surprised Igor decided to give up. Whether it was building a shelter or finding food, his survival skills were still lacking in many areas. But to be fair, even if all he could eat was seaweed, he managed to survive for 20 days. Farewell, and take care, Igor. The competition is entering its elimination phase. Contestants who can't keep up will have no choice but to surrender to the brutal forces of nature. No one can afford to be careless, because for that $500,000 prize, they must give it everything they've got. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of the intense moments ahead. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next episode. Earlier, Jessie had set up multiple traps in the forest, so now all she needed to do was check them daily. But today, she never expected that in the heart of the wilderness, such a powerful love story would unfold. She had caught a small squirrel, but what broke her heart was the squirrel's mate, who refused to leave. It kept calling out again and again, desperately trying to wake its partner. Its cries grew hoarse, echoing through the trees, but there was no response. In the end, it had no choice but to walk away defeated. Watching the entire scene unfold, Jessie couldn't hold back her tears. She blamed herself. Why did I do this? In that moment, she completely forgot about her hunger. Witnessing the love between the two squirrels had deeply shaken her. The wilderness had never felt so raw, so emotional. In the previous episode, Benji successfully caught a beaver. Now he had plenty of meat, enough to focus on building his shelter with peace of mind. If he could fully utilize this resource, he'd definitely have an edge over the other contestants. First things first, clean the beaver. Benji quickly sliced it open to remove all the inedible internal organs. Next, he hung the carcass up to make it easier to skin and defur completely. Once cleaned, he cut the meat into bite-sized pieces and began smoking it, a basic but highly effective method for preserving food in survival situations. That evening, Benji fried up a small portion of the beaver meat, adding a sprinkle of sea salt to create a simple but nourishing meal. In another part of the competition, Timogen was so focused on building a shelter that he didn't even have time to eat. He had already lost 20 pounds since the start of the challenge. But today, the hunger was unbearable. He had to go out and hunt. Timogen noticed that there were plenty of small squirrels scurrying around the area. Instead of using his bow, which would cost him precious energy, he decided to set up traps. He carefully carved a notch into a sturdy wooden stick, then buried it into the ground to anchor it firmly. With precise adjustments and keen focus, he assembled the components bit by bit, ensuring the trigger would be sensitive yet reliable. After some time and effort, the spring-loaded trap was finally complete, ready to catch his next meal. This morning, Timogen cooked a simple broth mixed with some berries, just enough to get by. At this point, he was placing all his hopes on the traps he had set earlier. While chopping wood, a grouse suddenly flew overhead. Without hesitation, Timujin dashed back to camp to grab his bow and arrow. One clean shot, his arrow pierced right through the bird. After a few seconds of struggling, the grouse was in his hands. Finally, after days of a vegetarian diet, he could enjoy a real meal. He roasted the wild grouse over hot coals, carefully preserving its natural flavor. It had been ages since he had a proper meat dish like this. If not for this lucky break, he might have been packing his bags and heading home in a few more weeks. "Adam, what are you up to?" He was focused on something in the distance, then suddenly released an arrow. Bullseye. He had successfully taken down a squirrel. Looks like all that practice is finally paying off. Back at camp, Adam couldn't wait to show off his freshly roasted squirrel. "If I can catch one of these every day," he said with a grin, "then hunger's not going to be a problem anymore." This morning, a bear wandered near Benji's camp. It stood there sniffing around, clearly drawn by the scent of something delicious. But Benji let it go. He figured now wasn't the right time to hunt a bear, especially since the current temperature made preserving meat nearly impossible. The next morning, he woke up and noticed the weather was getting colder. That was his cue. It was time to take down the old shelter and build a more advanced one. He started by chopping a few nearby trees to form a cone-shaped frame. Then he covered it with a waterproof tarp. To finish, he layered spare branches around the shelter to block out the wind. Not bad at all. His new shelter was coming together, warm, sturdy, and ready for the cold ahead. Kelly took advantage of the beautiful weather to soak up some sun. She planned to upgrade her shelter today, but first, food was the top priority. She grabbed her bow and ventured deep into the forest. The surroundings were eerily quiet, almost like nothing lived there. Suddenly, she heard a squirrel's call. Instinctively, she drew her bow and released an arrow. It looked promising, until she went to check and found the arrow stuck in a tree branch. So close. One more inch, and she'd be feasting on squirrel. Time to change tactics. Kelly made her way to the river, hoping for better luck with fishing. Surprisingly, the fish here seemed even hungrier than she was. The moment her line hit the water, bam, a bite. Thanks to that greedy fish, she finally had a proper meal lined up. Back at camp, she cooked up a hearty fish soup and made sure not to waste a single bite. Well, maybe not the bones. Pretty sure she passed on those. Not a bad day at all, huh? What about Jessie? Well, she's working on a massive shelter, and even after more than half a month, it's still not finished. Nearly every day, she survives on foraged berries and warm water, while tirelessly building her dream cabin. Jessie's strategy is unlike any of the other contestants. While most prioritize finding food first and building later, Jessie has flipped the script. She's pouring all her energy into constructing a solid, weatherproof shelter before seriously hunting for food. It's a bold move, no doubt. But maybe, just maybe, this long-game strategy will give her the edge she needs to outlast the rest. Will it pay off? We'll have to wait and see. Looking at the big picture, Tom stands out as the most well-rounded contestant in this season's challenge. He's mastered fishing, hunting, and trapping, a survival trifecta that few others can claim. When it comes to shelter, Tom didn't cut corners. He chose a hillside location to build his camp, which helps retain warmth during cold nights. He built sturdy wooden walls around it, used solid posts for the main frame, and didn't forget one crucial feature, a raised bed, essential in this rainy environment. For heating and cooking, he combined stones and clay to craft a reliable fireplace, then topped everything off with a waterproof tarp for extra protection. Every detail of his shelter seems pre-planned, as if he had it all mapped out in his head before even stepping into the wilderness. If survival were a science, Tom might just have written the textbook. A few days ago, Tom had set up several traps near his camp. Today, he decided to check them, hoping for a decent meal. The first traps turned up empty, nothing at all. Just when he thought he'd be heading back to camp with nothing but disappointment, the third trap delivered a surprise, a large white rabbit. He was genuinely amazed that such a big animal had gotten caught in his trap. Not only would the meat provide a much-needed feast, but the thick fur could also be turned into a warm scarf. perfect for the cold days ahead. Back at camp, Tom cleaned the rabbit and used all of the meat to make a hearty rabbit stew. It was the first time he had ever tasted rabbit, and to his surprise, it was actually quite delicious. Looks like today turned out better than expected. Juan is doing something pretty wild. He drank directly from the river without even boiling the water first. According to him, boiling takes too much time and effort. Plus, he claims his body has developed a strong immune system after drinking untreated water for over 15 years. Since the start of the challenge, one hasn't focused much on finding food. Just staying hydrated seems to be his survival tactic. But as hunger kicked in and no animals were found anywhere in the dense forest, one shifted his attention to the riverbank, where fish were clearly thriving beneath the surface. To increase his chances, he decided to build a small fishing dock in the deeper part of the water. It looked simple, but was impressively sturdy. Then came the test. He dropped his bait and waited. Within minutes, a fish took the hook, and then another and another. By the time he was done, he had landed a total of 6 fish. Wasting no time, one got a fire going and boiled some water to prepare a fish feast. He added a handful of berries to enhance the flavor. After more than 20 days without meat, the first bite of freshly cooked fish sent waves of joy through him. The taste was so good, it left him speechless. Benji is currently living an incredibly comfortable survival life. With 50 kilograms of beaver meat in reserve, he doesn't have to worry about food for the time being. Today, he decided to chop some wood to build a simple workbench, mainly to extract the remaining fat left on the beaver skin. After carefully scraping off the leftover fat, he collected a full plate of it. Benji placed it in a pot and simmered it over a low flame for 2.5 hours. The result? A pot full of clear, rich cooking oil, a valuable energy source that could sustain him even if he doesn't catch anything in the coming days. Once the task was done, Benji set out to hunt. Just a few steps from camp, he spotted a grouse perched in a tree. The sight immediately made him think of the legendary KFC. Without hesitation, he drew his bow and shot an arrow straight through the bird, taking it down effortlessly. Before cooking, he cleaned the grouse by the riverside. That evening, Benji rewarded himself with a satisfying meal after a productive day. Crispy golden grouse fried in the very beaver oil he had just rendered, seasoned with a bit of salt for flavor. In no time, the delicious dinner was gone, leaving him fully content. After a good night's sleep, Benji woke up and began his day with some exercise to get his body moving, followed by sunbathing to strengthen his immune system. A while later, he headed to the riverbank to collect a few medicinal plants and brewed a full pot of herbal tea, which he drank entirely. Feeling refreshed, he lay down on the beach to soak up more sunlight. With such careful preparation and an effective survival strategy, Benji is clearly setting himself apart from the rest. With his calm mindset, resourcefulness, and smart use of available resources, could Benji become one of the top contenders in this survival challenge? Things aren't going so smoothly for Adam. It's highly likely that he's contracted a parasite, which has made his condition worse. With no doctor around, all he can do is eat wild berries to ease the pain. Desperate for relief, Adam shaved the bark off a birch tree and brewed a tea from it, hoping that the natural bitterness of birch bark might gently soothe his stomach. And surprisingly, it worked. After drinking the birch bark tea, his stomach pain eased a little, giving Adam some comfort and allowing him to focus again on the challenge ahead. Benji is having serious trouble with his stomach. He's experiencing painful cramps, chills all over his body, and even a mild fever. At first, he hoped things would get better by morning, but by 2 a.m., the stomach pain had intensified drastically. He was running to the bathroom constantly, leading to severe dehydration. If left untreated, this could have become life-threatening. The last meal he ate had already come back up, and with no energy left in his system, his condition worsened quickly. Before the sky even began to lighten, a small boat quietly glided across the still lake, heading toward Benji's camp. There was no need for further explanation. Benji had officially tapped out of the competition. In the end, health is the most important thing. We wish him a speedy and full recovery. After Benji's departure, the competition has become even more intense, with only 7 contestants remaining. Since the day he caught the beaver, Terry has been living his happiest days on the show, thanks to the abundance of food. If he manages to hunt down another large animal, he could pretty much sit back and wait to claim that $500,000 prize. However, nothing is ever guaranteed when you're living in the wild. Right now, Terry is facing some challenges with preserving the beaver meat. The temperature isn't quite cold enough yet, and the damp environment is only accelerating the spoilage. To avoid wasting it, he decides to cut the meat into smaller pieces and smoke them. The aroma of the smoked beaver meat seems to be irresistible. Even the crows are circling above, perching on branches nearby. To stop the bird from stealing his food, Terry carefully covers the smoking rack with wooden planks before heading out. After 12 hours of smoking, Terry returned to check on the meat. The wooden lid was still in place, proof that nothing had disturbed it. As he lifted the cover, a rich aroma of smoked beaver meat wafted through the forest air. Though the color looked a bit unusual, this was 100% natural food. Thanks to the smoking process, this meat could now be preserved for a long time without the need for any additives or preservatives. Terry carefully wrapped up the smoked meat, storing it away for the days when food might be scarce. This would be his emergency energy source. To celebrate, he fried up the last of the fresh beaver meat for breakfast. One bite into the crispy, chewy, and fatty meat brought an explosion of flavor. Not stopping there, he brewed a savory broth using wood and beaver fat, filling the air with a mouth-watering aroma. It was a moment of pure bliss, made even more special by the fact that he was still in the middle of a grueling survival competition. Meanwhile, the Asian contestant, Temujin, was visibly thinner. Unlike the others who still had the option to fish for food, the stream near his shelter had nearly dried up. He now had only 2 choices to find food: hunting or trapping. That morning, he headed to the riverbank to gather some stones for crafting a trap. He sprinkled a bit of bait inside. Whether it would work or not was uncertain, but with hunger gnawing at him, it was worth the attempt. After setting up the trap, Temujin set off on his hunt for the day. He had spent time studying the habits of the wild chickens in the area, and now was the time to put his knowledge to the test. Before long, he spotted one. His first arrow grazed the bird's feathers, causing it to flee, but not too far. Without hesitation, he gave chase and fired another arrow. Unfortunately, the result was the same, and worse yet, the arrow got lodged high up in a tree. Determined not to give up, he had no choice but to climb and retrieve it. The terrain was slick and treacherous due to the forest's damp conditions. One wrong move could have cost him dearly. Thankfully, everything went smoothly this time. Though he hadn't yet secured food, Temujin's persistence and calculated moves proved he wasn't going down without a fight. Not one to disappoint his supporters, Temujin started the next morning with a big win. He successfully hunted a grouse, and before the excitement could even settle, he managed to take down a second bird that wandered by, as if it had volunteered for his next meal. This streak of luck was a huge relief after the tough days he'd endured. While heading to the river to clean his catch, fate smiled on him again. A third grouse appeared, casually foraging nearby. And you know how it goes. When you're on a roll, there's no way a bird like that could escape Temujin's arrow. One precise shot later, and he had 3 birds in total. Now it was time to clean them and think about how to prepare something truly delicious. Temujin began chopping wood to build a smokehouse. He wisely placed it at a distance from his shelter to avoid attracting dangerous predators with the irresistible aroma of smoked chicken. With this supply of smoked meat, he could finally relax a bit, knowing he'd have a steady source of food for the coming days. Look at this. This is Tom's shelter. A discreet hideout, fully stocked and well-equipped, with enough food to keep him going for several more days. It's no exaggeration to say Tom is one of the top contenders for the championship. As part of his daily routine, Tom heads out to check the traps he set. Most of them came up empty. Whatever creatures were around seemed to have moved on since he arrived. Perhaps they've gotten wise to his presence and relocated. A few days ago, Tom spotted a beaver near the riverbank. But the tricky thing is beavers are mostly active at dawn and vanish shortly after. So, instead of rushing in, he made a smart decision to head back home and return early the next morning, just before the sun rises. Before the sun even had a chance to rise, Tom was already at the riverbank. Now, all he needed to do was wait for the beaver to swim by. But catching one isn't easy. Just the slightest sound could startle it, sending it fleeing in an instant. After 2.5 hours of silent waiting, a beaver finally surfaced on the lake. The moment it drew closer, Tom released an arrow. It was a clear hit, but the beaver quickly disappeared beneath the water. Still, Tom didn't give up. He stood at the edge of the river, eyes fixed on the surface, hoping the body would float up. But reality can be harsh. Despite the entire morning of patience and effort, nothing surfaced. Looks like luck just wasn't on his side today. The fish one caught a few days ago were now nothing but heads, and he didn't even eat those. So today, he had no choice but to go fishing again. Unfortunately, it seemed like his lucky fishing rod had run out of magic. It had a small break in it. He tried to fix it and cast again, but there were no fish left in that spot. Without wasting time, he switched to hunting. Not long after, he spotted signs of a potential catch in the trees. Thanks to his sharp archery skills, he easily hit the target. He made his way to the bush where the grouse had fallen to retrieve it, but to his surprise, it was gone. He searched the surrounding area, but there was no trace of the bird. Not even his arrow remained. Losing so many times in one day left one disheartened. The thought of quitting started to creep into his mind. But on the way back to camp, he spotted the very grouse he had shot earlier, this time being dragged away by a weasel. Fueled by frustration, one quickly raised his bow and struck again, this time successfully taking down the weasel and reclaiming his prize. It was a small victory, but one that helped release the anger built up throughout the day. While most of the other contestants had already completed their shelters, one person was still struggling to finish hers, Jessie. Refusing to settle for a shabby tent, she set out to turn her campsite into a proper forest villa, complete with comfort and style. Although the construction was far from finished, the weather was on her side. No rain or strong winds, at least for now. Still, Jessie wasn't taking any chances. She dug a deep pit inside the shelter to build a fireplace, then created a small tunnel leading outside for smoke to escape, carefully sealing it with rocks for insulation and safety. The roof was the most important part of her project. Jessie meticulously layered dry branches across the top, then added a thick layer of moss to improve insulation. Finally, she covered it all with a waterproof tarp to protect against moisture, transforming it into a warm, secure hideaway ready for the harsh winter. Once everything was in place, Jessie decided to reward herself with a little celebration. She headed to the lake with her fishing rod, hoping to catch something for dinner. But things didn't go as planned. Not a single fish took the bait. She returned to her forest villa with a disappointed heart and an empty basket, saving her feast for another day. Even though there was no grilled fish tonight, one thing was clear. Jessie was proving to be just as determined and resilient as anyone else in this competition. The weather was getting colder by the day, and Tom knew he had to reinforce his shelter if he wanted to last. It was a time-consuming and physically demanding task, but with $500,000 on the line, he had no choice. After hours of hard work, he finally finished strengthening his shelter, making it more insulated and wind-resistant. With that done, he grabbed his bow and headed out to hunt. As a seasoned hunter, Tom didn't need long to find success. He quickly brought down his first squirrel of the day. Not long after, he managed to take down a grouse as well. That meant tonight, Tom would be feasting again, warm, full, and one step closer to victory. Every day, Terry spent his time sipping tea, relaxing, and wandering around to admire the natural beauty of Labrador, all in an effort to maintain a strong mental state before winter arrived. When night fell, he even rendered a fresh pot of beaver fat to store for future use. Hopefully, he wouldn't end up tapping out like Benji did. With a generous supply of beaver meat, Terry had grown comfortable, maybe too comfortable. His days were filled with leisurely walks and passing time without worry. It wasn't until his food supply started running low that he finally made his way back to the river to fish. That's when it hit him. This was the wilderness. When you run out of food, you can't just go to the supermarket. You have to get up and find it. After spending a while fishing at the lake's edge with no bites and no signs of life, the harsh truth began to settle in. It seemed like those carefree days of indulgence were catching up with him, and now his laziness might come at cost. After more than a month since joining the competition, Terry's body had become noticeably thinner. Even though he had enough food and water, the once strong and muscular man had transformed into a frail figure, with his weight steadily dropping. Today, the production team arrived for the routine medical checkup of all contestants. Terry was clearly anxious. He feared he might be disqualified. After a thorough examination by the medical team, they discovered that Terry had lost 50 pounds in a very short time. More concerning, however, was that his stomach had become infected with parasites, likely from eating beaver meat. This finding left the organizers with no choice. Allowing him to continue would put his life at serious risk. Hearing this, Terry was heartbroken, choking back tears. Perhaps this outcome was a reflection of the comfort and complacency he had allowed himself to fall into. But still, we shouldn't judge him too harshly. Instead, let's send him our best wishes and hope he makes a full recovery now that he's heading home. Goodbye, Terry. We're grateful you were a part of this incredible journey. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with the final moments of the competition. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. After Terry left, only 6 contestants remained in the competition. Tom was going through the toughest days since the challenge began. Having eaten only fruits for several days, his body had become weak and fatigued. A dangerous fall left him dizzy and disoriented, and due to his fragile condition, Tom could only lie in his shelter to recover. Since the day he let the beaver escape, it had been haunting his thoughts. He went to the riverbank every day hoping for a better chance, but all his efforts were in vain. There was still no sign of the beaver. After falling twice, he realized his physical condition was worsening dangerously. If he couldn't hunt something soon, he risked being eliminated. After lying in pain for a while, he finally managed to stand up. The swelling in his leg had become severe, and he had to use the first aid kit to bandage the wound. Under the torment of both physical and mental exhaustion, Tom had no choice but to call for help. When the rescue team arrived, his face was pale, and he no longer had the strength to move. They carried him onto a boat and brought him home safely. The competition is hotter than ever as another contestant has left, bringing the total number down to just 5. Adam was chopping firewood in preparation for the winter when suddenly a grouse flew by, seemingly mocking him. Unfortunately, it flew too high for him to shoot, so all he could do was swallow his frustration and keep chopping. But as if too arrogant for its own good, the bird flew over him again. This time, Adam grabbed his bow and let an arrow fly. In a flash, the grouse dropped. That satisfying shot helped cool his temper. After finishing with the firewood, Adam headed deeper into the forest to hunt. From a distance, he spotted another grouse. His first arrow hit, but didn't bring it down. Adam chased the wounded bird all the way to the riverside and delivered a second arrow, this time a clean kill. By mid-morning, he had 2 grouse to take home. On his way back, he noticed a large piece of driftwood washed ashore. As a skilled woodworker, Adam knew this wasn't just a piece of wood, it was an opportunity. With a bit of craftsmanship, this find could become something truly useful and give him an edge in the competition. The only Asian warrior, Timogen, after many days of relentless effort, finally managed to catch a squirrel. He now has a 20% chance of winning the $500,000 grand prize. If he succeeds, he will become the first Asian to win this grueling competition. With that kind of money, he could finally build a new house for his mother. The first thing Adam did after waking up was to make himself a chair. His current life in the wild is quite comfortable. As for the leftover wooden planks, he planned to build a door for his shelter, to block the wind and keep wild animals out. For him, this task was fairly simple. Just piece the planks together, seal the gaps with moss, and finally mount the door onto the frame. And just like that, the job was basically done. Carrie Lee is one of the 2 female contestants in the competition. Despite having limited food, she always maintains a positive attitude, something that would have broken many others long ago. Since her hunting skills aren't great, she can only prepare a small amount of fruit jam to get through the winter. Today is her mother's birthday. Even though she's far from home, she still took a moment to pray for her mother's good health. She hopes that when she wins and returns home, she can throw her mom a proper birthday celebration. While out foraging, she stumbled upon a squirrel that had frozen to death. And just like that, she had roasted squirrel for dinner that night. Timogen had just used a stick to take down a squirrel. However, the tiny creature wasn't nearly enough for a full meal, so he needed to find more protein. He grabbed his bow and arrows and set out in search of wild grouse. Over time, he had studied their behavior closely, so it didn't take too much effort for him to track one down. To shoot with such accuracy, Timogen relies on a simple trick. Always observe them from a 45-degree angle. Approaching them directly can easily scare them off. The final steps? Steady your breath, line up the shot, and release the arrow. Just like that. Lately, Carrie Lee had often spotted otters swimming along the river, so she decided to craft a special tool to catch one. After finishing her setup, she headed down to the riverbank. She tied a string to the tail of her arrow, planning to wait patiently for the right moment. Before long, an otter swam into view. As she raised her bow and aimed carefully, the otter suddenly dove beneath the surface and vanished. That night, with no fresh catch, she had to settle for some fruit preserves to fend off the hunger. Today, she decided to try again. After standing by the riverbank for quite a long time, she finally spotted a large rodent swimming toward her. Holding her bow tightly, she observed it closely. Not long after, the rodent surfaced, and without hesitation, she released an arrow and immediately rushed forward, giving it no chance to escape. This was the result of her 2 days of persistence. Back at camp, she carefully separated the edible meat from the inedible parts, then roasted its leg over the fire and slowly savored it. While the meat couldn't compare to beaver in flavor, it was much safer to eat, with far fewer parasites. Want to put on his warm coat early to keep himself insulated. He was hoping for snow, since that would make rabbit hunting easier. However, his most important task right now was fishing. The weather was quite cold, and most of the fish had moved to deeper waters. To have a real chance, he needed to get closer to the middle of the lake. So, Juan decided to build a longer dock. Using the same design as before, he simply added a few more logs on top. And just like that, it was done. He went out immediately to test it. And surprisingly, within just 10 minutes of casting his line, he got a bite. That result got him excited. He didn't stop at just one catch. Juan continued fishing and reeled in several more, hoping for a hearty meal. However, once he returned to camp and cooked up a big pot of fish soup, something strange happened. Staring into the steaming pot, he didn't feel hungry at all. It might have been the effects of prolonged hunger damaging his stomach, or perhaps he had simply eaten too much fish lately and couldn't stand the thought of more. Adam had crafted a festive decoration out of chicken feathers to celebrate his very first Halloween in the wilderness. But this also marked a more serious reality. Winter was coming to Labrador. That meant his top priority now was to reinforce the door of his shelter to keep the cold out. The windows, too, needed to be sealed tight to block every possible gust of freezing wind. After more than 40 days surviving in the wild, most of the nearby resources had been nearly depleted. So Adam made the decision to explore a new area, hoping to gather the essential materials he needed for the harsh winter ahead. While trekking through a different forest, something caught Adam's a delicious opportunity too tempting to pass up. And there it was, a small rabbit. With one swift move, he brought it down. Back at camp, Adam prepared a special dinner from the rabbit meat to celebrate. If he keeps this up, winning this season might come sooner than expected. If there were an award for the longest time someone went without food, Jesse would win it hands down. Since the very beginning of the competition, She poured all her heart and energy into building the forest cabin of her dreams. And now, it's finally finished. But the cost? Her health. She's been surviving solely on wild berries and a few leafy greens, too exhausted to go out hunting. Recently, she's been experiencing nausea and dizziness. When she went to check her squirrel traps, not a single one had caught anything. That night, her symptoms worsened. She had no energy left in her body. The next morning, a small rescue boat sped toward Jessie's camp. The medical team on board panicked at first sight. They feared she might already be gone. They quickly examined her and found that she had developed stomach ulcers from prolonged hunger. If they hadn't arrived in time, internal bleeding could have put her life at serious risk. As her body gave out, Jessie finally realized, if only she had balanced finding food with building her shelter, things might have ended differently. Let's all wish Jessie a full recovery. Goodbye, Jessie. The survival competition in Labrador has officially entered its most intense phase. The battle for the $1 million prize is heating up. Every morning, Timogen makes his way to a small frozen pond to collect drinking water. The ice is thick, but he carves through it, scoops some up, and sets it to boil back at camp. While the water simmers, he takes advantage of the time to head out hunting. But now it's winter. That changes everything. Most animals aren't roaming around like before. Food is scarce, and nearly all wildlife has retreated into burrows to begin hibernation. Finding anything out here is like looking for a needle in a snowy haystack. After wandering for a while, Timogen finally spots movement, 2 squirrels darting across the snow. His heart races. This could be his chance. Without hesitation, he grabs his bow and bolts into pursuit. He draws, aims, and fires. But the squirrel is quicker. It vanishes into the woods before the arrow even lands. Frustrated and empty-handed, Timogen heads back. If this keeps up, he knows the brutal truth. He might be the next one to tap out. As a strong and disciplined man, Adam always made a habit to wake up early each day to go hunting. For him, hunting wasn't just a way to survive. It was a responsibility, a part of his manhood in the wilderness. But today, the weather was not on his side. Fierce winds howled through the forest, causing massive trees to sway violently. Every time a dry branch snapped and crashed to the ground, it served as a stark reminder of how dangerous the forest could be. Alongside the howling wind came eerie cries of wild animals echoing from afar, creating a chilling, almost haunted atmosphere in the early morning. To make things worse, the winter cold had driven most creatures into hibernation. Around Adam's camp, there wasn't a single sign of animal activity. He scanned the area carefully, but the woods were silent and still. Every step he took left a faint print in the snow, until he made his decision. To avoid wasting precious energy, Adam quietly returned to his shelter to rest and conserve strength for a more fruitful day of hunting. In this harsh world, survival isn't just about being strong. It's about knowing when to wait. On Timogen's side, in order to conserve energy while hunting, he began building an automatic trap, hoping it might catch something for him. Trapping had always been one of his strengths, but hunger and thirst had drained him, making even this familiar task feel exhausting. After 2 grueling hours of hard work, he finally completed the trap. It was simple but effective. If any animal got tempted by the bait and stepped close, the mechanism would instantly trigger and capture it. That night, snow began to fall. The chances of catching anything seemed to fade with each passing hour. The bitter cold crept in, and so did the growing weight of failure. Still, even with his spirit worn thin, Timogen found strength in a single thought: the faces of his mother and wife, waiting for him at home. That thought alone was enough to reignite the fire in his heart, pushing him to keep fighting against the unforgiving forces of nature. The next morning, he woke up early to craft several snare traps, planning to set them up in areas where squirrels were known to roam. As long as a squirrel came out looking for food, it would surely be taught a lesson. After setting all the traps, he headed over to check on his automatic trap. But before he even got there, he noticed that the mechanism had already been triggered. Rushing over with hope in his heart, he found Nothing. His hope instantly crumbled. There was no catch. He had no choice but to reset the trap and head back to camp. Timujin then stood silently by the lakeshore, watching the water flow endlessly. He closed his eyes and quietly prayed for the lake to freeze soon, so he could start ice fishing beneath the frozen surface. Carrie Lee could feel the biting cold settling in, an ominous sign that finding food would only get harder from here on out. Early that morning, she checked all the traps she had previously set, carefully inspecting each one. While at it, she also crafted a few more, hoping to increase her chances of catching something. With a bit of luck, perhaps a rabbit or a small squirrel venturing out for food would be caught. As evening fell, she returned to her shelter to warm up by the fire and get some rest, knowing that conserving energy would be just as crucial as finding her next meal. It was now day 50. As usual, Adam headed out to hunt once the sun had risen. While walking through the forest, he noticed something moving in the bushes. Without hesitation, he raised his bow and fired, then rushed forward to check. To his surprise, it was a grouse foraging for food, a rare gift in the heart of winter, like something Santa Claus had left just for him. This unexpected prize brought a wave of comfort to his lonely heart and lifted his spirits in a way he hadn't felt in days. For Juan, today marked a memorable milestone. He had officially survived 50 days in the challenge, a result far beyond his original expectations. According to his analysis, not many contestants would be able to endure for more than 50 days, which meant he was now just one step away from victory. Juan rarely ventured out to find food, but he also knew that prolonged fasting could harm his stomach. At first, he planned to catch some fish, but to his surprise, the river was already frozen over. So for now, he decided to postpone fishing. Instead, he collected a bit of ice to melt into drinking water, fueling himself for whatever came next. Carrie Lee understood that the fishing season was coming to an end, so she disassembled the components of her fishing rod and repurposed them into a hiking stick, preparing herself for the harsh winter ahead. Her main task today was to check whether any of her traps had yielded results. The first few traps were completely empty, but when she reached the third one, success. She had caught a small squirrel, though it had already frozen stiff, like a popsicle. That night, she carefully divided the tiny squirrel into 3 portions, planning to ration it for the days when no other prey could be caught. After all, food is the ultimate key to survival in a place like this. Although Adam had food every day, his weight continued to drop at an alarming rate. The prolonged days of poor nutrition had almost turned him into a malnourished man. He recalled his original goal, to hunt a large black bear and win this season's competition. To avoid elimination, he knew he had to find every possible way to replenish his protein and continue his quest to find and hunt a bear. However, after walking just a few hundred meters, Adam's legs began to feel weak. Not long ago, it would have taken him just 2 minutes to climb a hill, but now he had to stop and catch his breath every few steps. It became painfully clear that his body had reached its limit. A feeling of hopelessness and helplessness crept in. But as a true man, Adam gritted his teeth and slowly dragged his tired body back to camp to rest. After some deep thought, he finally picked up the radio and called the production team. "This is Adam. I officially tap out." He had fought hard to make it this far and had gained many valuable lessons. "Thank you, Adam, and goodbye." A heavy snowfall brought back childhood memories for Carrie Lee. After taking a moment to enjoy the snow, she got back to work, reinforcing her shelter to make it warmer. The most effective solution, she believed, was to install a fireplace, one that could not only be used for cooking but also provide essential heat during the freezing nights. Interestingly, her fireplace design was quite different from the others. It remained to be seen whether this unique setup would outperform the rest. Once she completed the frame of the fireplace, she lit a fire inside to help dry the clay structure. However, before the wood had fully burned, disaster struck. The entire fireplace collapsed in a heap. Carrie Lee was so furious she couldn't even speak. The weather outside was freezing. Juan barely did anything other than go out to relieve himself and crawl straight back into his sleeping bag. He didn't even bother to eat. He said the human body could survive for 1 to 2 months using only energy from water. His only daily task now was a quick 5-minute walk to the lake to fetch water, then return to camp. Worried about a sudden overnight snowstorm, Juan decided to reinforce his shelter early. He gathered branches and strengthened both the front and back entrances of his cabin to prevent a collapse. Then, without wasting a second, he dove back into his sleeping bag. He had already pushed his body too far today. Winter may be a major obstacle for other contestants, but not for Timogen. For him, it was the perfect opportunity to showcase his experience and resilience. After gathering all his gear, he headed up the mountain. However, his hunger quickly caught up with him. Just a few steps in, he had to stop and rest. Unable to push forward any longer, he returned to camp. There, he pulled out some moss to cook. Although it contained only a small amount of carbohydrates, it was rich in toxins and had to be boiled multiple times to remove at least some of the harmful compounds. Timogen made full use of the boiling water, pouring it over the roof to create an insulating layer of ice. It wasn't nutritious by any means, but at least the gnawing pain in his stomach eased. Just as he was about to return to his shelter, he spotted a squirrel caught in one of his traps. It wasn't much in terms of calories, but in an environment like this, it was a blessing. After cleaning the animal, he returned to camp and made a warm squirrel soup, followed by a bit of hot water to soothe his body. At 57 years old, Carrie Lee has shown incredible resilience, surviving 55 grueling days in the wilderness. Right now, she's not only battling temperatures that plunge well below -10 degrees, but she also has to stay constantly alert for sudden attacks from black bears. The berries she had cooked earlier have now turned into a dark, solid mass. They may not look appealing, but they still taste sweet and tangy, surprisingly delicious. Today, she set out to check her traps in hopes of a small harvest. However, the traps were buried under a thick blanket of snow, making them almost impossible to locate. Every step she took through the deep snow was a struggle, draining her energy quickly. As she had feared, most of the traps were either crushed or rendered ineffective by the weight of the snow, leaving her empty-handed. With nothing to bring back from today's efforts, Carrie decided to rely on her stockpile of preserved food to get through the next few days. Day 56 of the challenge. Only 3 contestants remain. A snowstorm has been raging for days on the Labrador Peninsula, and the temperature has dropped to -5 degrees Celsius. One only steps outside briefly to collect water before quickly returning to his shelter, avoiding staying exposed to the cold for too long. Timogen decided to stay still inside his shelter to rest and conserve energy. After more than 50 days in the competition, it was the first time he could truly calm down and feel the breath of nature. He listened to the howling snowstorm slamming against his shelter and couldn't help but worry that something might go wrong with it. Meanwhile, Carrie Lee kept working nonstop. After her fireplace broke down, she had to endure the cold all night long. With no choice, she kept gathering dry firewood to stay warm, despite the raging snowstorm. The winter cold in Labrador had become brutally harsh, and her stockpile of firewood from the past few days had run out. She rushed into the forest to collect more dry wood and protein. Even though her body was tired and drained of energy, she was determined not to give up. In the end, her efforts paid off. She managed to catch a squirrel. She couldn't hide her joy as she ate the roasted squirrel. It was a huge source of motivation for her to keep going in the challenge. Meanwhile, Juan seemed to be doing very little. He focused mainly on drinking water and resting, even trying to craft a tool for breaking the ice to catch fish. By now, the ice was thick enough to stand on and start ice fishing. He prepared a wooden pole and carefully processed the bark. Then he securely attached an axe head to the top of the pole. The long ice-breaking axe was complete. Timogen began to feel hunger so intense that even his teeth ached, a clear sign that his body was severely malnourished. Without more protein, he wouldn't last much longer. The most important task today was to quickly check the traps, but the deep snow made everything much harder. Each step had to be taken with extreme caution. One slip could be the end. However, reality proved cruel once again. The trap was completely empty. He had only one option left: to head to his food cache and bring something back to cook. Originally, he had planned to save it for Thanksgiving, but now he had no choice but to use it. Struggling through hunger for the past 2 months had caused Carrie Lee to lose 44 pounds. Her mental and physical strength had been significantly worn down, and if this continued, she would soon be eliminated. While heading into the forest to check her traps, she noticed fresh rabbit tracks in the snow. They looked very recent, and she figured the rabbit couldn't have gone far. She followed the tracks for a while, but then they suddenly disappeared. Just as she was about to turn back, she unexpectedly spotted a squirrel, but unfortunately, her shot missed. Worse yet, the arrow was lost. It was truly a streak of bad luck for her today. One has enter hibernation mode, starting to cut down on any unnecessary activity. Each day, aside from sleeping and drinking water, he stays completely inside the shelter, without any survival pressure at all. Surprisingly, just by drinking water, he remains healthy and in good spirits. Snow has started falling around Timogen's camp, and the forest blanketed in white seems like it's home to him alone now. At this point, he has lost 50 pounds and is in a state of severe malnutrition. Keeping his body warm has become much more difficult. Finding dry firewood is already hard. Carrying it back is even harder. Luckily, he managed to start a warm fire, which gave him some comfort. Each day, he can only work for about 40 minutes, but Timogen feels significantly weaker. Days of starvation have pushed his body to its limit. The only strength he has left is just enough to go outside and fetch water. He's aware that he could pass out at any moment during those trips. By now, the feeling of hopelessness has reached its peak. If things have come to a point beyond recovery, then stepping away from the competition is the only option left. He had already pushed himself to the very end. After 63 days surviving in the wild, he gained so much. Even though he didn't win the $500,000 prize, he defeated his own limits. Farewell, Timogen, the brave warrior from Asia. Who do you think will win? Let's stay tuned until the end. As for the king of the wild, Juan, he lives by just drinking water and sleeping. Occasionally, he gathers some firewood, but beyond that, he does nothing else. And today is no exception. He seems quite at ease in his shelter, unbothered by hunger or the cold. The ground no longer offered any berries to eat, and the traps have been buried under snow. For 3 days now, Carrie Lee hadn't found any food. Her only option was to drink warm water and nibble on some old dried berry peels she had stored long ago. Taking advantage of the sunny weather today, she decided to go hunting in the forest to replenish her food supply. Up ahead, she spotted the silhouette of a snowshoe hare. By instinct, she raised her bow to aim, but as she drew the string, pain surged through her body. An old injury flared up. A strange wave of hopelessness suddenly washed over her. She had no choice but to return to her shelter and rest. Sitting quietly by the fire, she worked on her sled, all the while clinging to hope that maybe tomorrow she'll return from the hunt with her sled full of bounty. Snow continued to fall on the Labrador Peninsula, and what once filled Carrie Lee with hope now drained her spirit. As her faith began to crumble, tears welled up in her eyes. She knew, deep down, she simply couldn't endure any longer. At 57 years old, the bitter cold and relentless hunger had finally pushed her to her limits. After a few moments of hesitation, she picked up the satellite phone and declared her withdrawal. After 2 months in the wilderness, this had been the most unforgettable experience of her life. Although she didn't win the $500,000 prize, Carrie Lee felt at peace. She had pushed herself to the very end, with courage, with strength. It's just, age had caught up to her. Farewell, Carrie Lee. You truly gave it your all. Now, only one remains. The man who has endured hunger deep in the forest. All that stands between him and the grand prize is one final step, passing the medical checkup. To keep him from getting too emotional, the program quietly informs him. 1. Please prepare for your health check. Just as he finishes drinking a pot of warm water, the show's helicopter arrives. Even though he has lost nearly 20 pounds, fortunately, His vital signs and internal organs are all functioning normally, while Juan is sharing his survival experience. Something completely unexpected happens. His girlfriend suddenly appears from behind and throws her arms around him. They hold each other and cry uncontrollably. A moment of raw emotion, love, and relief. As for Juan's victory, achieved by staying hydrated and conserving his energy, what do you think about that strategy? Let's talk about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and inspiring survival journeys. See you in the next episode.